Most science, at least in the U.S., is developed, most of the high science anyway, is developed through military research labs, military contracts, and some contracts to the National Science Foundation. But all of the military work and much of the work done by the National Science Foundation and others represent compartmentalization, separation of the sciences in small bits and pieces, so basically one side doesn't know what the other is doing. In fact, the first paper I ever presented at 19 was on the contrasting sort of our approach of compartmentalization in our approach to science and the Russian approach, or the Soviet approach at that time, which was to use generalists, to take people from all disciplines, integrate them into the same room so that you could develop the higher ordered thinking, because then you brought all of these various disciplines, even when they didn't seem to fit, you brought them together and they tended to feed off of each other in a way that built better and more comprehensive science. In fact, as it relates to electromagnetic exposures, the science developed in the Soviet Union said, and they set the regulations, not that they enforced them, but they at least had them on the books, they were 1,000 times more stringent than the U.S. standards in the same areas because of that integrated approach. When you look at the productive capacity of the USSR during the Cold War, they couldn't produce their way, into an outhouse. It was a mess. But what they could do is compete on science. And the way they competed on science with us, and were able to not only excel in some areas, surpass us in others, and stay up with us in most, was by integrated science, as opposed to compartmentalization. It's cheaper, it's more efficient, and it yields usually better results. On the U.S. side, we do the opposite. We continue that model of compartmentalization to the detriment of really good science, and at a huge, huge economic cost. The duplication within that system, the cost of man-hours within that system, and the waste that's created in that system. Now, what does that all mean in the broader context of global science? The U.S. spends in the regular defense budget somewhere around $700 billion a year, which is a big number. We've got a couple wars going on top of that. The Chinese spend about 70, 80 billion is what our intelligence tells us, at least that's what's publicly released. When you run inefficient science, and the Chinese don't run inefficient science, they steal everything they can that's already been developed and then take it from there. And they do it at rice bowl wages. They're not paying top flight scientists $250,000, $500,000 a year in salary and benefits, and they're not paying Davis-Bacon wage rates to build ships. They're building them for a bowl of rice. And what you get in China for 70 billion is what you get in the U.S. for probably far in excess of what we actually spend, because you can't measure it in dollars or currencies. You have to measure it in productive output. And what the Chinese are doing with their productive output is making sure that they can move millions of men and women in their armed services anywhere they want to put them on the planet. That's what's going on there. That for every ship they build, we think about it because they actually build hardware and they build it faster than virtually anyone on the planet. And it's causing a lot of concern, because when you start to think about how does all this play into the geopolitics of the planet, climate change and energy and the issues that we've been talking about the last couple of days, they really do fit together. China is moving to energy independence. They're building a coal to liquids plant every 18 months from start to finish. They have so many planned online. Their objective is to be free of the West in terms of contributions to basic natural resources.